So, who of you out there likes doing puzzles? How good are you at solving puzzles? Are you a natural problem solver, or do these things just leave you scratching your head? I ask because, you see, photography is, well, basically, it's just problem solving. A series of problems that need solving in order to produce a well-exposed and well-composed photograph. And if you look at your photography this way, well, it may just help you produce better results, more consistent results each time. The world around us gives us problems, and you need to solve these too in order to take a good picture. If you don't solve them properly, your results will suffer. Luckily, this doesn't mean having to solve world peace. So let's break this down, starting off with now, there's certain factors, certain questions that need to be answered every time you take a picture in order to problem solve your compositions. The basic question we can ask ourselves first is, which format? Horizontal or vertical? Which orientation are you going to use? Horizontal, or turn the camera to create a vertical? This may seem an easy one to answer, but there are certain things to consider. In many ways, horizontal is seen as default. It's the default of the camera as you bring it up to your eye. It matches our own field of view, and it's a natural view and frame for landscapes, as well as many other subjects. So when should you switch to vertical instead? When your subject is more vertical, taller than longer perhaps? Yes, or perhaps when you want to emphasize foreground more. And therefore, if you do opt for this upright framing, make sure you do include plenty of foreground. Imagine the viewer is scanning this picture from the bottom of the frame to the top. That's how our eyes naturally read this type of picture. So start your composition at the bottom and lead the eye up the frame. But of course this can be swapped over, and you can use negative space to draw the eye down instead, in a way that just can't be done with a horizontal frame. So back to horizontal images, and these are naturally read from left to right. So again, make sure your compositions match this if you can. But with this in mind, shooting vertically can almost be seen as breaking the rules. I bet if you look back through your images, you'll find that most of them are framed horizontally. So take this opportunity to look back and see what made you shoot in the opposite vertical format. Did it work? Did it add extra impact? Is this something you need to do more of then? Can you find subjects and scenes to suit? Your other problem solving in composition is the positioning of your key subjects, your focal points. What are we looking at exactly? What do you want us to see? Where, therefore, should it be positioned in the frame, and why? In the centre of the frame perhaps, or on the rule of thirds, or on a rule of thirds line, or just ignore those rules and place it somewhere else instead. Ask yourself the question of where the subject looks best before you press the shutter. If you can't explain why the subject looks best there, then maybe you shouldn't be pressing the shutter just yet. Now, alongside composition is lens choice. This will influence the composition and dictate how much of the view is included. A wide angle, of course, includes more of the view, but can also lead to poor or loose compositions. Your viewer may get bored before they've scanned your entire picture if the composition isn't tight enough. This is where you may need to zoom in, crop in, and exclude unwanted elements. But your problem solving here is by how much. How much cropping in is enough and how much is too much. Do you stand back with a telephoto or get in close with a wide angle? The perspective will change with each choice, and again, these are problems that need thinking about and solving. Then, with your composition solved, we then have to work out our exposures. This of course has three influential factors that need to be taken into account and considered. Which aperture, which shutter speed, and which ISO setting. You need to decide which is the most important for that next picture. How much depth of field do you want? Is the subject to be kept sharp or allowed to blur? The first two factors dictate this, and then your ISO needs to balance these, but will of course be influenced by the time of day of your shoot. And if the ISO is too high, are you going to tailor your other settings to help lower it? Another problem to solve. Again, thinking about aperture, we have combinations to consider here too. A wide angle lens will be a great combination with a small aperture, and you may be able to get away with a larger setting than what you need compared with using a telephoto lens. By choosing that telephoto and a wide aperture gives you a whole different look to consider. Is this the best for that result? Then apart from those obvious settings, you also need to decide how light or dark you want your result to be. It needs to be correctly exposed of course, but what exactly does that mean? How will you render the shadows, for example? How dense will they be? Will these be left to be just that, shadows? Or do you want to record detail in these areas too? Are you forgiving the highlights to allow for that? Or is there something else that can be used to control both? And what is that? It's another problem that needs solving. And of course the answer to that is a filter. But which one? So when you press the shutter, and I bet this isn't your usual approach, is this new scene best captured and represented in colour, or is it black and white? And why? We see the world in colour, but we have the opportunity with our images to remove that, sometimes to make it even better and add more impact. A colour shot can either be rich and vibrant or subtle and muted. Black and white can be bold and full of contrast, or very similar, soft with just layers of grey tones. Different looks for different subjects. So, beyond the technicals, beyond the obvious camera settings, you still have another question, another problem to solve. What are you trying to say with your picture? How should this view or subject make your viewer feel, for example? If you are compelled to take this next picture, it must on some level stir an emotion in you, otherwise it probably wouldn't have stopped you in your tracks. Trying to convey that to the viewer is not easy, but your picture will have more meaning, depth, as in depth of feeling, emotion, if it can. You then have to work out how to convey that in your result then. This can be down to the composition, this can be influenced by technique, or simply just great light. Your camera is full of questions for you too. Which buttons should do what? How many focus points do you need? How do you want your autofocus to behave? Or do you just want to take care of this yourself? How many frames will the camera take when you press the shutter? And will there be a delay before it does? How will the image be recorded? At what quality? And which card should it write this to? All options, yes, but seen more as problems that you need to solve means that you may actually improve the results that you get. Problems and solutions, that's all photography is really. The better you are at understanding the problems, the quicker you will be at solving them, and in turn, the better photographer you will become. And here's another problem for you to solve. Do you buy all my ebooks individually, or do you purchase them as part of my E6 subscription? Which tuition is best for you, my online course or my photography workshops? Your hard-earned cash is valuable to you, so whichever option you go for, I guarantee that you're getting value for money and guidance that cannot be bought elsewhere. Check out my website to see if your photography problems can be solved with my content and products. Anyway, I hope that helped you in some way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.